Legends in the music industry are the people who have a big impact in the music industry, hence the title of legend. One of the things I run into is the short time in the spotlight. Either they fade from the public eye and the only thing that is remembered is their songs that made them blow up whilst they're forgetting their later work. Or they might lose relevance, so they end up relying on stunts or cheap gimmicks to remain in the spotlight long after their time. But the last set is the more tragic one, where they die too young, before or during or after their peak. A lot of prominent stars have lost their lives due to the fast life they live, either if it comes down from substance abuse, accidents, or the worst kind, where the past life of crime catches up to them. Former enemies strike, or they become victims of robberies due to their lavish lifestyles. XXXTENTACION was sadly one legend who died too young during the peak of his career. He was a rising star who was making moves in the rap scene with his unconventional version of rap with a lot of trap and alternative rock elements. He was a pioneer of the SoundCloud era, rising during this time alongside Lil Uzi Vert, Kodak Black, and his friend and frequent collaborator, Ski Mask, the Slump God. His life started off in Plantation, Florida, where he spent his childhood in Lauderhill, that was considered among the most dangerous towns to live in. During this time, he began his life of problems as he was expelled from school for his temper and would constantly get into trouble. During this time, he was arrested for armed robbery. During his prison stay, he would meet Ski Mask and would decide to change his life for the better after his stay in juvie, so his career would begin with a blue snowball microphone in 2013. He would post his songs on SoundCloud and would slowly gain a following. During this time, he would form the underground collective Members Only, which included members Ski Mask, the co-founder, Wi-Fi's Funeral, and Rob Mask, to name a few. His career was on the up, and would make waves with a sleeper hit, Look at Me, when he was recognized in 2016. During this time, he was working on his music and was making waves, and he became a pillar of the SoundCloud era. And the year after, in 2017, he would release his critically acclaimed album 17, which was released and it was a certified double platinum in the US, and number 2 in the Billboard Top 200. After that, he would drop his second album, Question Mark, in 2018, which would end up in the number 1 on the Billboard Top 200, and was quadruple platinum in the US. But his life of crime was never truly gone. Even after the fame, he still was haunted by the past when he was charged by battery in 2016, and it became a huge scandal. His past almost ended his career, as the media would end up attacking his character, and this would be a stain to the legacy of X. But he was showing real changes in his character. He actually matured and was making an actual impact in both his music and his actions, as he would give back to the poor. His redemption was a genuine attempt to change. Things were going great for a long time, but would later make an announcement that he was going to go back to college. But life wasn't that simple for the rising star, and something unpredictable would happen that forever would change the rap world. Jose Dwayne Ricardo Onfroy, the man who would later be known as XXXTentacion, his story starts on January 23rd, 1998, and his life was off to a rough start. He grew up in Pompano Beach in Lauderhill in South Florida, which is known for being a very dangerous area. His home life wasn't great either, according to X's mother Cleopatra Bernard, said that X's father would routinely be beaten by his father, and his mother was also a victim of her husband's abuse. In 2008, when Josiah was only 10 years old, his father was arrested and jailed for RICO charges. He was arrested from a sting operation. His father was later deported years later after his time in prison. He was never there for Jose, and when he was not the greatest parent, so understandably, Jose was not really close to his father. Jose would later move to his grandmother's house because his mother was not able to take care of him due to her having her own problems. Jose moved into a gated community that was known for its criminal activities. When he was living with his grandmother, he didn't have the best grades in school due to his behavioral issues and didn't try to fit in. During this time, Jose would fight constantly and was not able to make any friends at school. In his own words, he was depressed and insecure as a kid, and he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Not everything was negative though, because with his aunt's encouragement, it would lead him to enroll into choir, and this would spark his interest for music at such an early age. But eventually, his misconduct got him expelled from school after getting into too many altercations, and his life outside of school was also bad. Being a child, he was exposed to a lot of problems inside his community, constant violence and death all around him, and he was a witness to his uncle's corpse when he took his own life. Jose was getting into legal trouble when he got into fights on robbery, drug possession, firearm possession, and resisting arrest. It would not improve. In an interview, he said his behavior got worse and didn't really have any changes until he met Stokely Clevon Gallhorn, the man who would later be known as Ski Mask the Slump God. This friendship started over a mutual interest in music. They would freestyle, and when they both got out of prison, they would begin to record music in their free times. Their efforts would soon go into music instead of crime, and then Jasa would buy a blue snowball microphone from eBay, and with Audacity he began to produce music for his apartment. XXXTentacion was born, and he would post his work into SoundCloud. His music took inspiration from great artists like Kurt Cobain, Papa Roach, Cage the Elephant, and Coldplay. Rock elements were incorporated into his music, and that made him unique, and he began to grow his fan base that was loyal. But disaster would strike for X's career because of some charges against him. During the summer of 2016, his girlfriend Geneva Ayala said that he was abusive to her, and suddenly, those who were with him would turn on him and attack him as they viewed it as a despicable act, rightfully so. His girlfriend said that X would threaten, abuse, torture, and humiliate her while they were together, and when she was pregnant, things didn't change with X's behavior. His fan base stood with him regardless of the charges. Meanwhile, social media deemed him to be a villain. So his accusation divided the public into two sides, those who believed X and those who believed his girlfriend. While the case was levied against him, and he was made to stay in custody at least until the next trial that would take place. He would plead no contest to other charges relating to armed home invasion, robbery, and battery on March 26, was on probation after his release. Would not be free from problems though, but this time they were not due to him committing a crime. He would start beefing with hip-hop's biggest rapper, Drake, because Drake stole X's flow from his song Look At Me. X has said that Drake's song, KMT, which was dropped earlier in the year, was straight plagiarism. So X would start taking shots at Drake during the interview on Miami's 103.5 The Beat. But this was nothing more than just celebrity beef that never went anywhere, but soon the drama would slowly begin to fade as he was maturing as a person. Would drop his album Revenge, which didn't have too much press. The album consisted of 8 small songs, and it was revered as a highlight as opposed to a new body of work. It did well when it peaked at number 44 on the Billboard 200. He also made an appearance in XXL's 2017 freshman class. Due to his fans voting, he got a spot on the list even though some of the XXL readers were against it. But he did put on quite a performance in his cypher. His album 17 was released on August 25th, and it was critically acclaimed, and people really enjoyed the album for having this more raw feel to his album. It debuted at number 2 in the Billboard 200 chart. During this time, he was acknowledged by others, and he would later sign a deal with Capitol Records on October 19th. The deal was rumored to be worth a few millions, but oddly enough, he would later make an announcement that he was no longer signed to Capitol Records because his contract was terminated, so he said he was a free agent, to which Capitol Records said X was still signed to them. This was nothing more than a baseless and petty feud against X and his label. After a few months of silence, X's and his lawyers submitted a document that was allegedly signed by his ex-girlfriend that stated that X's accuser refused to cooperate with prosecutors and requested to drop the case. But prosecutors weren't buying it and thought they believed that his ex-girlfriend was coerced into signing the document, so his bail was denied. The case was not going too well for X, and if convicted, he would have faced decades in prison at minimum. It was finally released on December 20th. Afterwards, X would release his second album, which would reach number 1 on the Billboard, and it sold around 131,000 units during the first week. This was the biggest achievement for a SoundCloud rapper to receive. In fact, he was the first SoundCloud rapper to receive the number 1 album. One of the tracks from the album, called Sad, would peak at number 7 on the Billboard Top 100. On May 10th, he would have his music removed from Spotify because of his ongoing case. And X didn't coincide with Spotify's new hate content and hateful content policy. The media didn't take too well to the news, and Spotify would eventually fold and reinstate X's music on June 1st. X would still be haunted by his past and his alleged abuse. That was the reason as to why his music was removed, and it became a headache for him and his team as they dealt with public scrutiny here and there. All of this would come to a head when later in the month, there would be an event in his life that would forever change the hip-hop community. This all started on June 18th, 2018, when he was going on about his day, when he decided to go purchase a motorcycle, so he was planning to go to the dealership. But before that, he made a quick stop at the bank to withdraw a large sum of money. During this time, 4 suspects named Dedrick Williams, Robert Allen, Michael Boatwright, and Trayvon Newsome spotted X, and then they saw that he had withdrawn a large amount of money while having an equally expensive bag from Louis Vuitton. So the 4 suspects would follow X's vehicle in a dark-colored Dodge Journey SUV. This was a targeted attack since investigators found out that Williams recognized X because they had gone to the same probation office, so it was not too far-fetched to think that he recognized X's car. But after he made a stop at the dealership, then the 4 suspects wanted to confirm if it was X, so 2 of them went into the dealership to make sure they had their guy, and after they confirmed it was X, they decided to wait to ambush him. So after Jose left at the dealership, the 4 suspects blocked Jose's car with their own, and then Boatwright and Newsome got out of the car and they would demand for X's valuables, and a struggle ensued, and after a little bit of time, they would let off shots that would hit Jose in the neck, and then they would steal his Louis Vuitton bag, as well as leaving the scene. Someone made a call to 911, and Jose was rushed to the hospital at Broford Health North. And the paramedics tried their hardest to keep him alive, and they managed to revive a pulse. But they wouldn't be able to bring him back to life, as he would succumb to his wounds following the shooting. After the shooting, the Broward County Sheriff's Office would offer a $3,000 bounty for any information leading to an arrest. The suspects got away, but not for too long. 2 days later, on June 20th, the police would arrest Dedrick, and then witnesses would corroborate that he was seen at the scene. A week later, the police would find their second suspect, Robert Allen, as he was a person of interest in the case, and he was under investigation since he was later arrested on July 26th. But before that, Michael Boatwright was arrested on July 5th due to some drug-related incident. Soon after, the police were able to piece together his involvement in the case and was arrested for the murder of the late rapper XXXTentacion alongside another suspect who was not yet under custody. But a month later, on August 7th, Trayvon Newsome was arrested, so then the suspects who were responsible for X's murder would be brought into custody and were being prosecuted for the crime. During their stay, each member would try to find a way out of the case, as not only did they incur the wrath of the general public for the death of a favorite public figure, they were also at the mercy of the justice system. If convicted, they would not be able to see the outside world for decades. Dedrick Williams would deny his involvement in the attack, but then he would confess to partaking in the crime after a while, stating that he felt remorse and would have sleepless nights. In his words, he feared being labeled a snitch. So he would try to plead his innocence. Whether he actually felt remorse is unknown, but he was being charged for the crime. Michael Boatwright would be facing an unrelated drug crimes, so after that trial was over, he would be charged for the death of X. Robert Allen was taken into custody and then charged with premeditated first-degree murder along with his co-conspirator Boatwright. Robert was charged and was to be held without bond. Finally, after a while, the last man, Trayvon Newsome, was charged for the same crime as the other guys. People wanted these men to get life in prison without parole or even the death penalty if possible. Understandably, people just wanted to make sure that the 4 guys would face the worst punishment possible. Even Jose's father wanted these men to face the worst possible sentence, and it was possible for the court to sentence them to capital punishment in Florida. Since the suspects were convicted of first-degree murder, it was possible to sentence them to death, but prosecutors wanted for the 4 men to face life in prison without parole. Later on, Robert Allen would plead guilty to a lesser conviction of second-degree murder in exchange for working with authorities. So, to put it simply, Robert snitched out his crew for a lighter sentence. Boatwright's lawyer tried to get a psychological expert to give him a mental health evaluation on the guise that Boatwright was incompetent to stand trial. So shortly thereafter, an evaluation expert concluded that there was nothing wrong with Boatwright and was mentally competent to stand trial. After this was all said and done, all 4 suspects were found guilty of all counts on March 20th, 2023. So after all, these men will be facing life in prison without the possibility of parole. After his death was known to the public, everyone would write their condolences to the late rapper, and people would talk about their stories with X, and the public was right. Jose died too young. Adam 22 would hold a memorial day for Jose after the news of his death was known. Then the owner of the dealership, Riva Motorsports, the place where X's murder took place, held a vigil for the late rapper. Eventually, there was an open casket for Jose on BB&T Center in Sunrise, Florida. A lot of rappers close to Jose attended the private funeral, as well as his family. He would later be laid to rest in a grave mausoleum at the gardens of Boca Raton and Boca Raton, Florida. His music would eventually skyrocket to the top of the Billboard. Eventually, his management team would posthumously release his fourth album, Bad Vibes Forever, which people were divided on due to a few of his songs being unfinished, as well as having collaborations with a lot of rappers who X wasn't really close to, and people just generally thought that it was poor business practice to release songs from the late rapper, whether or not they were finished. People were not only shocked, but offended at the fact his record label would greenlight this, and essentially profit from the golden goose even after death. The other side of the spectrum was just happy that X's work was not left or forgotten to time. Either way, it was still divisive to sell tracks that were not finished by X himself. It was still sad to see a legend go way too soon during the peak of his career. XXXTENTACION, alongside other rappers who died too soon, would be remembered as people who changed the rap scene, and their story will not be forgotten. X didn't deserve to die as young as he did. He had a lot of potential, but that is just the dangers of being a rapper like him. All it took was an unlucky encounter that took his life. He tried to make an active change in the lives of his fans, as well as trying to better the community and himself. Before his death, he would announce that he was enrolled in college and would be attending school, as well as talking about his life goals to reach the lives of many even after death. The last video was thought that X knew about his imminent demise and would make a statement for people before he was gone, but nothing came from it. Most think that this was just X just having a heart-to-heart with his fans and talking about his aspirations, as he would tend to do on his social media.
Anything is possible, and I really just want, at least, alright, let's say worst thing comes to worst, I fucking die a tragic death or some shit, and I'm not able to see out my dreams. I at least want to know that the kids perceived my message and were able to make something of themselves and able to take my message and use it and turn it into something positive, and to at least have a good life. I at least, if I'm gonna die or ever be a sacrifice, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy, or they found some sort of answers or resolve in my life, regardless of the negative around my name, regardless of the bad things.
The people who would take the life of X just targeted him for his possessions and killed him in the process. There was no other motivation. But as the saying goes, dead men tell no tales. Even after there was another motive, the answer is unclear, as X is gone and the criminals have already been brought to justice.